Good morning, everybody. Isabel Munilla, my colleague from the US, she talked about what was published with your pay and how many organizations worldwide is working on this issue. I will briefly say something about why is this important for this industry, something about expectations from Publish What You Pay Norway, what it means to go beyond EITI and Dodd-Frank, and what should Norway do. And like Raymond Baker mentioned, the extractive industries hold maybe the highest potential that can lift people out of poverty and create possibilities to lift people out of all those interlocked sets of problems really that we call poverty. Unfortunately, extractive industries is linked with so many negative aspects: low economic growth, conflict, migration, forced migration, weak institutions, and limited incentives for states to build up institutions that may underpin a social contract. Citizens should be able to hold their government to account for trade and the management of non-renewable natural resources. Well-informed public understanding and scrutiny of what the government does may also help harness the opportunities created by natural resources. The recent US regulation addressed exactly that. But this is not only a question about developing countries. It is not a question about them and us. It is not only about the corrupt elites, which Raymond Baker mentioned. It's also about recognizing the context which makes this possible. We have a service industry and jurisdictions making it possible. And I'm not saying that industry is legal. It is legal, and that is the problem. And today, with the cross-border economy and the network economy, information economy, with extreme use of subsidiaries and jurisdictions, it is very hard both for governments and investors to have enough oversight so that they can make informed decisions. And a financial crisis still going on highlights the impact of opacity on society. This has affected society's trust in industry, in capital providers, and also in national government's ability to regulate. Therefore, we can also see widespread international consensus is in favor for increased transparency and accountability. Also, the institutions responsible for defining standards, accounting standards, and providing information has been seen as too close to the interests they are set to regulate. So there is an increasing concern over the lack of critical distance and independence of those they regulate. The report that we will shortly present here today would not have been possible without the Dodd-Frank. The Dodd-Frank is amazing. So much work has been done, and you heard Isabel talk about that. And the Obama administration has encouraged other administrations to do the same thing or to go further. The 4th April this year, Publish What You Pay Norway presented a legal report explaining how Norway easily could implement a similar Dodd-Frank legislation in Norway relating to payments that could open up to further regulations. We suggested that the requirement for a country-by-country reporting should be incorporated in the Security Tradings Act. We said while Dodd-Frank is important and necessary, Norway needs to go further. Norway needed to do or we needed to do our work looking into what has happened legally in the US before we suggested all the elements that we think needs to be subject to regulation. So the report that you can see here today, we called it for defining elements because these elements are defining if we are going to see any development taking place. Please note that this is a first draft. We put our thoughts together in writing so that we can have a discussion about it. It is not a finished report. We might have missed something. We might be able to enhance something or to answer some questions. But this is a draft work in process, and we will appreciate very much your input on it. That's very important for us. This is based on what we know now, and with good input also from oil tax experts who have first-hand experience with what exactly financial instruments are used and the magnitude and what activities taking place in tax havens would be exposed if we manage to regulate this. That is included in the report. The report was commissioned by PWYP Norway and written by Mr. Richard Murphy. He's a chartered accountant in the UK, very familiar with the country-by-country reporting. He's the director of tax research and founder of Tax Justice Network. He's here, and it's possible to ask questions to him. The final version may be revised. We will gather your input, think about it, and address concerns and comments and see what we can do about it. So the report we presented today needed to have done the groundwork first. We needed to look into the Dodd-Frank and to see how it can open up to further regulation. Therefore, in the last report, in defining elements, we have adjusted a suggestion on the law wording so that it may include the elements we think should be subject to regulations. So against this background, we are of the opinion that one way of regulating the elements we proposed would be to incorporate a reporting requirement as a new subparagraph in Security and Trading Acts, paragraph 5.5. But we adjusted the proposal slightly so that it's saying information related to payments should be provided, and not only information about the payments themselves. Again, this is a suggestion, it is a draft, and we seek your input on it. This wording is, however, in accordance with the corresponding provision in Dodd-Frank in section 13Q2A, and also it's in line with the EITI and what we already have amended in Norwegian law related to the EITI process. And don't worry, anybody, I'm not going to read all this out loud. This is just to indicate that on section 4.4 in this report, you will find all the elements listed, and you can have a look at it. And I recommend that you read it thoroughly and discuss it and come back to us with your thinking on it. So how does the proposal go beyond the EITI? It's fully in line with our very long support to the EITI, for which PWYP have been active participants for many years. The EITI has produced over 50 reports since 2002, where over 500 billion US dollars have been analyzed thanks to Revenue Watch Institute in the US. The reports disclose payments, and they reconcile with what the government earn. They also give additional information. And Norway was also the first country, the first OECD country to implement the EITI. And we also had the petroleum law amended, which I mentioned. In connection with the implementation, the Petroleum Act, paragraph 42.10.8 was amended and made a new provision regarding the Dodd-Frank, it builds into legislation what is required under the EITI. I think the main differences how we go beyond Dodd-Frank in this report is that it's moving from payment data and disclosure data to accounting data. It's possible to track change over time. It shifts the focus from citizens in host countries to a wider audience, and it shifts the focus from exposing corruption in the host country to including showing extent of use of tax havens. It shifts the focus from what is being reported to what is not being reported. It also shifted the risk from investors and from governments and from citizens to the companies taking those risks. It also shifts focus from host country focus to context focus. And also we're moving from the divide between them and us to us. And this will support the EITI by giving reconcilable and audited information on a company-by-company basis. There has been many positive Norwegian steps in this process. The Commission on Tax Havens and Capital Flight made some suggestions, and our report today is very much in line with that. I'm not going to go through all of them, and there are also more, and obviously Oil for Development came before this small timeline here. And also the dialogue project has been immensely important in providing forums for debate, and I hope that this can be a concrete contribution to that debate. So what should Norway do? Norway should not wait for the EU in order to develop a blueprint of what the EU does. Norway should use its political space, and Norway should use its knowledge and competence in order to go further. It's possible. If we are to go further, that will not happen from the US. It is Norway who would probably need to take a lead on that. And I think you should see that other countries would follow you. And there are many legitimate users of financial reports other than investors. And their needs to be considered as well. They are each, in their own right, valid users group. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs needs to take that into account when making decisions and acting in the interest of the public. So we have presented a concrete draft for discussion. It's based on what we know as a network up until now. It's saying what needs to be done, why, and what information it will give. And I hope that it can be concrete contribution in the further discussion. Thank you.